Hello and welcome to Off With Their Headlines. It is I,
It sure is.
Meredith Constant, along with the dewy
Literally.
Amanda Matta, because it's humid.
Thank you.
It's humid
So
in your parts.
humid. I'm so jealous of your altitude and low humidity today because I'm sticky. I don't appreciate it.
Is it harder to breathe? Like the Maroon 5 song once told us, yes. Does the hair stay in place? She sure does.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
she sure does.
You have it all going for you.
And you can see that
God.
on Patreon.
I wasn't going to do it.
Yes, you were. You were thinking about it. But
It's all good.
that's okay. We have so much to get to today, though, that
Yeah.
we're going to get right into it because Pope Watch.
The final installment of Pope Watch. It's been a fun ride. I kind of thought I could ride this bit out for a little bit longer, but here we are. The conclusion of Pope Watch is upon us. We have a new pope, an American, mind you. When I texted Meredith, all I said, all caps, American Pope. And she said, oh my God.
I said, oh my God. But then I was confused because when we did our episode a couple of weeks ago, you had talked about a different cardinal that was being considered from America who sounded terrible.
Yeah, there are a few that are terrible. This is A, a guy who's not terrible, and B, a guy who was not one of our candidates, not anyone's.
You want to know who
really.
predicted it?
Tell me.
Steve Bannon.
Really?
Steve Bannon said, I'm really afraid we're going to get this progressive guy out of Chicago. Begins with a
Love.
C, ends with an O. In the middle, there's a Hicag. And that's where Pope Leo, lots of Roman numerals, is from.
Yes. Is
he the 16th?
Well, under the papal reign of Pope Leo XIV, or at least all of us who have apparently sworn allegiance to the Catholic Church are. So Cardinal Robert Prevost was elected pope after it was less than 2 days. It was on the second day of the conclave. He was born in Chicago, although he does notably have dual citizenship in Peru, where he did a lot of his mission work as a bishop, I believe. He is 69. He is a Sox fan, not a Cubs fan.
That is such a big deal, too.
Yes.
I remember reading a paper corrected. They're like, he is not a Cubs fan. He is a Sox fan. And someone said, this really speaks to the fact that he is, really there for the suffering.
Gosh. Yeah, I mean, immediately that was the question when people heard Chicago, and immediately there was some incorrect reporting on the internet, kind of based on like where I think Cardinal Prevost was living at different times. But no, his brother confirmed to some media outlets that he is a Sox fan. So he was ordained a priest in 1982 at the age of 27. He received a doctorate in canon law at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Rome. He has spent much of his life outside the U.S., even though he is the first American pope. He did work in Peru, as I mentioned, as a missionary, a parish priest, a teacher, and a bishop. So he also speaks fluent Spanish in addition to English and Italian, which all cardinals, I think, do speak Italian because that's kind of the common language at the Vatican.
Kind of seems important.
Yeah, and when you're pope, you are the Bishop of Rome as well, so you have that link to Italy as well. Cardinal Prevost served for 2 decades in Peru. He became a bishop there as well as a naturalized citizen. Then he rose to lead the Order of St. Augustine, which, much like Pope Francis, was a
Jesuit.
Jesuit, thank you.
Look at me.
You got it. Much like Pope Francis was a Jesuit, the new Pope Leo is an Augustinian. He's committed to the poor and migrant communities as well as to meeting people where they are.
Can I tell you how much you've meant to me, Amanda? How much you've educated me? My boyfriend was over for dinner and we were talking about the Pope and I started going into all the different, how it all works. And he was asking me questions. He's like, well, yeah, describe it. And I started to, and then I said, wait, you were raised Catholic. Why am I telling you this stuff? He was like lapsed. So
Yeah,
I felt
sure.
very good that I had this wealth of knowledge to share.
Absolutely.
Because of Amanda.
Yeah. And I'm reading up on all this as well, just like about the different positions being held at the Vatican. So leading up to the death of Pope Francis, Cardinal Prevost was the head of the Vatican's bishop's office since 2023, which means he ran the office which selects and manages bishops around the world.
Also, he will tweet your ass, okay?
Yes,
because as we found
will.
out, thank God,
Mm-hmm.
He also subtweeted JD Vance. He hasn't tweeted a ton in 2025, but one of those times was over migrants and deportations and the meeting with Bukele, and yeah, it was hot. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
That's the Riz I'm looking for. And
Yes.
he's a young, spry 69. So
That's what I'm saying. This is what I said to Meredith. I was like, I think one of the reasons he was picked is he can be in there for 2 decades and give a middle finger to trad Catholics and just MAGA Republicans for
I,
all of that time.
I've been thinking a lot about this pick. And I think in some ways it's kind of scary because it means Americans have really lost influence, I think, in the world. And people are very, very
You
scared.
mean like the American,
Like the country. Like the country,
yeah.
yeah. Because I can't see a world where an American pope is sat during other times of prosperity. I also think it is a hugely political statement
I would
about
agree.
where the rest of the world stands when it comes to human rights issues, when it comes to authoritarianism. And I've never had so much hope from seeing a Catholic, an American pope, because now the most well known American in the world is the pope. And
Mm-hmm.
while I'm not saying he's perfect, it's still the Catholic Church. I think my values are more aligned with the pope than Donald Trump and JD Vance, you know?
For sure,
And
yes.
having that out there, I don't know. It felt really good. I've never been this excited
Yeah.
or knowledgeable about a new pope.
Yes, trad Catholics or the Catholic convert community who are basically like ultra conservative, they are not handling this news as well as Meredith because Pope Leo has pushed back very forcefully against the kind of militant vision of Christian power that the Trump administration in particular has been elevating lately. Before he became Pope as a cardinal, a social media account under Cardinal Prevost's name shared criticisms of the Trump administration dating back to 2015 before he was even elected, mainly criticizing his positions on immigration. Most recently, in February, he wrote that Vice President J.D. Vance, who, if you don't know, converted to Catholicism in adulthood, he considers himself
2019.
Yeah.
2019. I'm telling you, this was all laying the groundwork for the eventual political run.
For sure. Oh, for sure. He considers himself a so-called trad Catholic, which I will tell you right now, cradle Catholics cannot stand these people. Why are you inviting me to Bible study? We don't do that. So Cardinal Prevost tweeted that JD Vance was wrong about his attempts to find a theological justification for the administration's treatments of migrants. This is when JD Vance did an interview about like in the Catholic Church, there's this understanding that you take care of yourself, then your family, then your neighbor, and then it radiates out from there. And Cardinal Prevost basically clapped back and was like, no, this is not a thing. You have a fundamental misunderstanding of the doctrine of Ordo Amoris. And he said, quote, Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our love for others. He also criticized Trump and Salvadorian President Bukele for making light of the deportation and detention of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. This is his most recent post before Conclave. This caused far-right 9/11 conspiracy theorist Laura Loomer, who is one of Trump's advisors, to call Cardinal Prevost a woke Marxist pope.
Did you see all the tweets that were
to
like
the tune of
Pink
Pony Club? Woke Marxist pope. I've been singing it. Yeah.
Dancing at the those were beautiful. All those words together.
It's like, congratulations, you've
really
discovered
hit me
the Catholic Church.
He has the receipts. I love that for him. He is that meme from Dynasty. I love that one of the big talking points of right wingers is, you know, we need to make this a Christian nation. We need to spread Christianity. Christians are persecuted.
No, not like that.
And then we're like, no. We don't mean like progressive
caring
values.
about other people.
We don't mean that. It's just we know they're hypocritical in their wielding of Christianity and Jesus, but it's just another opportunity to show that. And listen, Steve Bannon was right. We did get the woke Marxist Pope.
We deserve.
I'm just kidding.
As for how Pope Leo XIV was selected, he did have to overcome this taboo of Americans being elected Pope. It had previously been said, like, this would never happen. Basically, the idea there was that having a Pope from the US, while the US is a dominant global superpower, was seen as a potential for undue influence, especially when it came to matters of religion. The Church has never wanted to be seen as aligning too closely with the US's geopolitics. Yeah. So Prevost's election kind of reflects how the Church is evolving in that regard. But also, I would say, yes, it was a direct middle finger to the Trump administration and JD Vance because
maybe not a middle finger. Maybe it was a like spit on the ground
Bless
in front
you,
of
my
no,
child.
it's Italy, so it's this. I'm doing the hands.
Yeah, it seems that Francis, as well, before he died, saw Cardinal Prevost as something as his heir apparent. I wouldn't go so far as to say he was like hand selected, but this is the man that I would say Francis saw taking over for him. He moved him in 2014 to take over a diocese in Peru, and then, of course, made him a bishop and the head of the Peruvians Bishop Conference before calling him to Rome to take over the Vatican bishop's office. So, in this conclave, while we weren't considering Prevost like a top contender, it seems that the cardinals thought differently. This was the most geographically diverse and largest conclave in history. There were 133 cardinals from 70 countries. Not all of the cardinals, knew how a conclave worked. We know that actually Pope Leo is one of the cardinals who watched the movie Conclave before going into
If
conclave.
only Conclave had come out this year for the Oscar
Yeah,
season. I don't know.
so good. But also, a lot of the cardinals didn't know each other before arriving in Rome, so they didn't necessarily know who they would have voted for. But the one person that they would have known would be Prevost, because he was overseeing the selection of bishops. So these newest cardinals who had never done a conclave before did know Prevost. They knew this guy. They knew he was a good leader. It's also been said that cardinals did not hear Prevost make any major speeches during pre-conclave discussions, but he did make an impression in smaller groups, particularly these English-speaking groups of cardinals were really gravitating towards him.
He did not go in as Pope and leave as Cardinal,
No, he
is
didn't.
what you're saying. See, I
Exactly.
remember.
And one cardinal from Madagascar told reporters on Saturday that by the final ballot, Prevost had received more than 100 votes, suggesting that he had an extraordinary margin well beyond the two-thirds majority, which would have been 89 votes.
Okay, you go,
So
boy.
he's popular. One last tidbit I wanted to bring in was his name, because as we talked about, popes get to pick their papal name. I never like to predict what they're going to pick because it always seems to come out of left field. Pope Leo XIV is what we're going with. He himself has directly referenced his namesake being Pope Leo XIII. He was pope from 1878 to 1903 and really laid the foundation for the modern Catholic social thinking. Most famously, this was in 1891 with his Rerum Novarum, which was a kind of a tract that addressed workers' rights and capitalism at the dawn of the industrial age. Pope Leo XIII was criticizing both laissez-faire capitalism and state-centric socialism, giving shape to this distinctly modern Catholic vein of economic teaching.
Interesting.
Pope Leo XIV said he identified with his predecessor, Leo XIII, in his remarks on Saturday, and he addressed the, quote, great social question of the day posed by the Industrial Revolution. And he said, in our own day, the church offers everyone the treasury of its social teaching in response to another industrial revolution and to developments in the field of artificial intelligence that pose new challenges for the defense of human dignity, justice, and labor. So to be
He's
clear,
going after AI. Okay,
on
Pope.
day one, he read J.D. Vance and Donald Trump for filth over immigration and identified artificial intelligence as one of the main issues facing humanity. Amazing. We have no choice but to stand. I do have one more fact that I want to give you, which blew my mind about why Cardinal Prevost might have chosen the name Pope Leo. This is not something he said, but it is
He
a
loves
connection.
Titanic.
No.
Okay.
Deeper cut than that. Sorry.
Okay. What's deeper?
So we go back to his connection to the late Pope Francis. He's kind of seen as his number two man. Pope Francis himself took his papal name from Saint Francis of Assisi because of the saint's, down to earth nature. This is a saint who founded the Franciscans to lead a life of Christian poverty and try to walk as closely in Jesus's footsteps as possible, including suffering and preaching to the birds. Saint Francis of Assisi had a right-hand man of his own named Brother Leo. This guy was described as his favorite disciple, his secretary, even his confessor, so the person that a saint said confession to. Leo was also present as St. Francis received the stigmata. Do you know what that is?
No.
It's a very, very Catholic thing. Is, quote, the gift of the 5 wounds of Christ. So it's this idea that a saint received literally like holes in their hands, their feet, and one in their side in like this sort of blessing, but also like cross to bear, making them closer to Christ. It's like a real thing.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Flip it down low and reverse it. Francis was stabbed?
Not Pope Francis, Saint Francis.
Okay, but
Yeah, no, no, no.
okay. Oh my god, I was like, wow, I
That
felt
would
like
have been a
that
bigger deal.
feel
Yeah.
like that would have made news.
It would have, yes, because there is a modern day saint, Padre Pio, who also received the stigmata, and that like was a big, big deal. But no, Saint Francis apparently also received this gift from Christ. Brother Leo was with him at that time. So these guys were BFFs. They were ride or die. Brother Leo received a nickname from Saint Francis, which I just love, and I really hope that Pope Leo in the modern day kind of revives it. His nickname was Frate Pecorello de Dio, which means brother little lamb of God. And I just think
That's so
that's so
cute.
cute. It's so
We can
cute.
call him Little Lamb if he's good.
Brother little lamb of God, because of his simplicity and tenderness. Leo also was nursing St. Francis during his last illness. After St. Francis died, he was seen as the staunchest defender of the saint's ideals. He even got into a feud with other people who kind of overlooked the fact that St. Francis had been really into this life of poverty and
Oh
like
my god, I
protested.
love
Yeah.
this. I love everything
So
about
there's
this.
a big, big chance that this is also a reference that Pope Leo XIV is pulling in choosing this name. And
I
we
love
have
the
to
idea
stand.
of him being psych. You
Yeah.
thought Francis was
Yeah.
bad? Good.
Yeah. I hope so.
Just you wait. I'm his bestie. I'm about to ride him.
That's my ride or die. I'm going to just continue what he started. I think that's what we're going
What
to
a
see.
great, great time for JD Vance to be a Catholic.
I hope, okay, JD Vance excommunicated when? I would
That
be
would be so hot.
hype.
Oh, that would be so hot.
Just put it out there.
We do stand. Let's talk about briefly, though, just some of the drawbacks
Yes.
of this Pope, because you can't ignore that part of it.
Absolutely. There are a few because, of course, this is the leader of the Catholic Church. He has drawn criticism in the past over dealings with priests accused of sexual abuse. That's something I need to look more into, but it's kind of a tale as old as time. If you're Catholic, you know how this works. We never want to air our dirty laundry as the Catholic Church, right? And unfortunately, that leads to a lot of shuffling priests around to different posts, like remove them from the situation where they got into trouble and hope that that solves it. You know, we don't, yeah. That's kind of what I'm anticipating I will find if I look into that. Cardinal Prevost has also expressed opinions on the LGBTQ plus community that aren't quite as progressive as Pope Francis, his predecessor. Although he hasn't said much recently, it seems that the last time he talked openly about LGBTQ plus issues was 2012.
Has the Supreme Court even ruled on, wasn't it Oberfell? Has that even ruled yet about?
It might be right
think-
around the same
I think
time.
that was 2013. I'm going to look into it while you continue.
So, in that year, addressing bishops, he lamented that Western news media and popular culture fostered, quote, sympathy for beliefs and practices that are at odds with the gospel. He cited the, quote, homosexual lifestyle and alternative families comprised of same sex partners and their adopted children in this address. So, we have to hope he's gotten more progressive since then.
Yeah, and to be clear, it was Oberfell v. Hodges was 2015.
Wow.
And that was the ruling that the 14th Amendment guarantees same-sex couples the right to marry, extending the right to marry to same-sex couples nationwide.
10 years ago. Wow.
Yeah, so that was 3 years after his last address on LGBTQ plus.
And again, these beliefs are very much in line with the Catholic Church and their teachings at the time. There has also been discussion of women taking on greater roles in the church. That was something Pope Francis was sort of tiptoeing towards. So we can hope, although it is not confirmed, that Pope Leo XIV will kind of continue that work.
It certainly feels like a step in the right direction. But my question is, are those steps taken in the red-soled shoes? What are we seeing about Pope fashion already? Because that was a big topic of conversation last week, was what would his drip be like?
Yes. So Pope Leo XIV, when he did make his first steps onto the Vatican balcony, it was with a little bit of drip. He came out wearing the traditional red mozzetta over the white robes. So Pope Francis famously came out just in his kind of white robes that corresponded to his religious order, the Jesuits. Pope Leo is now restoring that traditional dress. I have not seen his shoes, sadly.
But he's not like dripping in diamonds and stuff. I think he was wearing a cross, like a big cross.
As
But
you do.
I wasn't sure if it was particularly fancy.
It's not particularly ostentatious, although compared to Pope Francis, I think anything will be.
He looks good in red. Like, you can't blame him.
It seems so far he is sticking to more traditional, although maybe not as flashy, Pope garb. On Thursday, when he was elected, I see him wearing black shoes. So we might have to work our way up to the red slippers.
Did he just go with his basic, like, black
Yeah, it
Docker?
looks like
Like,
it.
you know what
Yeah.
I mean? He said, listen, I've had these for 15 years.
Yep,
They're
absolutely.
indestructible.
So
I'm keeping them on.
it seems like in the fashion realm, he will not be following closely in Pope Francis's footsteps.
We will obviously continue with all the Pope related news as it comes. It's always funny where this podcast goes. But I actually, can we stay on the topic of fashion for a second?
Absolutely, we
Because
can. Yes.
you found an interesting little tidbit about
Sure.
a festival, a movie festival, a film festival.
There you
There's the
go.
word.
Yeah, there is some fashion news that made headlines beyond the Vatican this week. The Cannes Film Festival is apparently coming up. I don't ask me dates, I don't know, but the Cannes Festival is one of the most glamorous of award show season, and it has revised its dress code. This is making headlines because historically, the Cannes Film Festival has been known to be very conservative and restrictive of especially what women can wear. So it dictates you have to wear either evening wear or a little black dress, a cocktail dress, a dark colored pantsuit, a dressy top with black pants. I love that that's included because I'm the queen of a dressy top with pants.
Love it.
As well as elegant shoes or sandals with or without a heel. For men, that's a black or navy blue suit with bow tie or dark colored tie. Very conservative. This year, they have added 2 new kind of pillars to this dress code. They write on their website in the FAQ, for decency reasons, nudity is prohibited on the red carpet as well as in any other area of the festival. And they also added voluminous outfits, in particular those with a large train that hinder the proper flow of traffic of guests and complicate seating in the theater, are prohibited. So Diana Ross could not wear her show-stopping Met Gala outfit to the Cannes Film Festival this year.
They are saying this is not the Met Gala. This is not the moment to have
You
your
will
moment.
dress, quote, decently.
And we're not having a Bianca Sensori moment on the
Yes.
red carpet. We are not doing it.
Yeah, let's talk about the nudity angle first. CNN writes that the amendment prohibiting nudity raises more questions than it solves, particularly in how nakedness is defined. Bella Hadid is a celebrity who, in the past few years, has really pushed the bounds of, quote, decency at the Cannes Film Festival. She and Florence Pugh as well have been known to free the nipple in their, red carpet outfits in the last few years. Then on the extreme end of the swing, I think you do have the Bianca Sensoris who are just showing up naked, for lack of a
Apparently,
better term.
Halle Berry had to make last minute changes to her outfit. So the festival started today when we're recording, which is May 13th, and she was going to wear a gown with a very long train. But these dress codes were so last minute.
Amazing.
And she actually said during the jury press conference that she had an amazing dress to wear, but she can't wear because it's big.
Huh.
It's got a big train.
Just bustle it. I don't know.
Yeah. But she did say the nudity part is also probably a good rule, which is interesting because she had one of the
she's
top
been
illusion-esque dresses at the Met. Which is interesting.
It is interesting that people are willing to hop on board. These changes are thought to be influenced not just by like the way that fashion trends are moving, but also extreme cases where outfits on the red carpet at any award show or film festival have overshadowed the events that are taking place. I also wonder, you messaged me about, like, wasn't this the same event where somebody yelled at the handlers on the red carpet not too long ago?
There was a particular handler that people were pointing out in videos, at least online, that seemed to be rushing along Black celebrities.
Yes, I looked into that, and I think I can connect it to this change in dress code. This happened actually in 2024 with Kelly Rowland. She is the one who she stole headlines with a visible confrontation with a female security officer making her way up the steps into the theater. Before she could finish posing for her photos on the stairs, there was this one woman in particular who was kind of putting her hands on her, rushing her into the venue. Other security guards kind of stepped in and also put their hands on Kelly Rowland. One of them even stepped on her train, which wasn't excessive. It was like this red strapless dress with a little bit of a train, I would say 3 feet. It wasn't insane. Rowland later said she felt like the French security rushed her time on the red carpet, leading to the confrontation. Colleagues of the usher said she was working under a lot of pressure to keep people moving on the carpet as to stop crowds building up. There was no pushing or shoving, no scolding. She was only doing her job. She didn't do anything wrong. So my thinking is maybe this has been added to the dress code to prevent that kind of confrontation. Like, if the ushers are so worried about people taking up space on the carpet, they need to move people
And this would
along.
cut down. Don't you think they should
I
have put an
think maybe.
actual measurement on what an excessive
Of
train is? Because I'm starting to think, what does that entail?
Yeah, because it reads voluminous outfits, in particular those with a large train that hinder the
Large is
proper
not
flow of traffic.
that's not a measurement. You know, what are we talking about
Yeah,
here? Is it 3 feet?
good
Is it
point.
longer? Is it I'm just saying maybe we could be a little more specific, but perhaps the hope is that people will just say, "You know what? No train. We're not gonna do a train at all because we don't even wanna deal with this." There have been rebellions in the past, though,
Yeah, so this is
on
not the first time that the
yeah.
Cannes dress code has been kind of critiqued for its lack of clarity, I would say. It's been put on blast in the past for the quote unquote understood ban on flat shoes for women. The most recent dress code, if you heard me say, explicitly states that flat shoes are fine. You can
Yes,
wear
I did hear that.
Yeah, you can wear elegant shoes and sandals with or without a heel, parentheses, no sneakers. But in the past, that was not present, and women have been turned away for not wearing heels. In 2015, there was a group of women in their 50s turned away from the premiere of the film Carol at the Cannes Film Festival. Wild.
Wow.
Yeah, due to their shoes not being, quote, tall enough. And again, there's no measurement presented, there's no written rule. It came to light later that if this wasn't bad enough already, some of the women in the situation had medical conditions that prevented them from
I
wearing
was
stilettos.
just thinking that.
Yep.
You're literally asking people to cause pain
Beauty is pain, Meredith. I
and
don't
more
know.
to their feet. It's crazy.
Yeah. The following year, Julia Roberts was one of a few actresses who went barefoot on the carpet, presumably in protest of this understanding. Again, it's not an explicit ban. It never has been written down, but it's kind of an understanding that women would wear heels.
And Kristen Stewart did that in
Yes, the next year,
2018.
2017, she made
2017.
headlines for, quote, ditching her sky-high Christian Louboutin pumps midway through walking the carpet. She said, I feel like you can't ask people that anymore. If you're not asking guys to wear heels in a dress, you cannot ask me either. So since then, things have kind of relaxed as this has become a topic. But I would say it's interesting that we are regressing on the nudity and volume issue, almost as a way of, I don't know, reinforcing traditional values in society through our fashion choices.
God, was Evie magazine right? I'm just kidding.
No, I don't know. But there are proponents of the strict dress code who say that Cannes, even in the world of award shows, requires a heightened level of glamour. Chloe Sevigny once told Vogue, the Cannes carpet is the carpet. Being in France, there's a level of elegance that's encouraged, and expected maybe, but it is a kind of old-fashioned and archaic rule. Women should be able to wear what they want to wear. So that was probably talking about the heels, but I think it still applies when we're talking about quote unquote nudity within reason and quote unquote voluminous outfits.
I can't wait to hear more stories of who ended up,
Breaking the rules or
breaking
bending
the
the
rules
rules.
or having to change their outfits last minute so that maybe it's
Do you
like,
think
oh, that
anyone
doesn't
will
look
be
right.
like barred entry to the carpet because of these rules?
I have to imagine someone
At
is
least
going to
somebody.
do something and they will to kick up a fuss and get press attention.
Absolutely. We'll come back next week and update you if there were any style snafus on the Cannes
Ooh,
red
I
carpet.
can't wait.
We want to transition now to a few royal stories, but maybe not in the breaking news fashion that you might expect.
Or
I don't know.
fashion.
Fashion.
Because we've
Yeah.
had this on our plate to talk about for a while,
Yeah.
and we've called it woo-woo shiz.
Yes, this was sparked. So you might have seen Catherine, the Princess of Wales, has started promoting nature on the official Instagram account of the Prince and Princess of Wales. Like, I wish I had more information to give you, linking to a cause or a charity. No, she's just kind of promoting nature, which
Job is nature.
her job is nature now. It used to be children, now it's nature. She has posted a few videos now celebrating nature as her sanctuary, most recently in a video that came out, I think it was Monday, kind of promoting Mental Health Awareness Week. She decided that the avenue for that should be nature this year. So they made the kind of this highlight reel during their last trip to Scotland, showing off the landscape. It's almost like a tourism ad for the UK countryside. But this got me thinking, if Meghan had done this, there would be headlines about interesting that your sanctuary isn't your family. Why don't you call your dad? We would be interviewing Thomas Markle. We would be calling this hippie nonsense, because some of the things that Kate says in these videos are quite spiritualistic in nature, I would say. She says it's through nature that we can fully understand the true interconnectedness of all things, the importance of balance, and the importance of renewal and resilience.
There is no way Meghan could have
gotten
that.
away with that.
They would have, know what they would have said? Meghan treats a tree better than her staff. You know, they would, it would be like those out.
There would have been
Duchess
lots
Difficult
of little quips.
is nicer to ants than she is.
And let me
to
say
her
right
staff.
here, I think that nature is an amazing way to connect deeper to yourself, to humanity. It has a, quote, capacity to inspire us and help us to heal and grow in mind, body, and spirit, as Kate said. This is also a woman who told cancer patients that they needed to receive a lot of sunlight as they were getting their treatment. So I think we're edging up against a few, as Meredith and I would say, woo-woo trains of thought here. So we wanted to dig a little deeper into the royal family's connection to alternative healing, alternative spiritualism. I sent Meredith down this rabbit hole. I am so anxious to see what we have turned out.
I had to cut myself off at some point because I realized there was too much I needed to look into, because of course
there always is.
There's
always more.
There is always some bullshit going on. So,
and again, this is not us ragging on woo-woo shiz.
No, not at all. I'm talking about more the role of the monarchy in government decisions, in medicine, in directions of that sort. And also something I thought about as I looked into this is why royals in particular were drawn to alternative forms of medicine.
Okay.
And also what that says about the kind of care that they can get, that they can research, that they can do.
They can go down this route.
At almost exclusive ways of medicine, and how I feel like that plays into it too. Like, we don't just need the regular, we need the, because we are different. Beyond. Yeah, we are
special. We are okay. I'm with you.
You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of an interesting thing to keep in mind as I go through some of this.
We deserve better, almost.
So much better.
Okay.
What a lot of royals, and I'm talking specifically about the British royal family, practiced was homeopathy. And this is a system of alternative medicine, and it's based on the principle that like cures like. So that the substance that causes symptoms in a healthy person can be used to treat those same symptoms in a sick person if it's highly diluted. So you kind of use the essence of what is making you sick to cure yourselves.
Interesting.
Yes. So that's mainly what I found in my research. And this dates back to Henry VIII. He used various cures that he came up with, administered by his team of doctors. One example was he used a topical treatment which contained apples, linseed, and a freshly laid egg for a jousting injury sustained in his leg. That was 1536, and we know that
we know how well. Yeah, we know how well that worked out for Henry. Oh, no one wanted to get near that thing. Yikes. Okay.
And then a century later, Charles II's doctor was said to have conjured up a potential cure for the plague made of dried toad.
Love.
I don't know if you've heard of the plague. I mean, we haven't, so I guess he cured it. That was great. I'm just
misinformation queen over here.
Queen Adelaide, who was the wife of King William
IV.
The Fourth.
You know Roman numerals.
I'm really having a hard time with Roman numerals today.
Also the person who lived in, what's the cottage? Adelaide Cottage that Will and Kate moved into.
I was like, I've heard that name before. There we go. See, It really pays to have a historian on this podcast.
Sometimes.
And so she had a serious issue that the physicians couldn't cure. So she called in the services of this dude, this guy, Dr. Johann Ernst Stumpf. I think you have to say it like that.
Stumpf.
Who cured her and created the first of many supporters of homeopathy. This is really where it kicks off, right? King George V, who would be Queen Elizabeth's grandfather, was also appreciative of it because it helped treat his seasickness. He enjoyed sailing, and so that helped him. Actually, what's interesting, what was prescribed to him was a homeopathic dose of tobacco. because tobacco is known to cause symptoms of dizziness. And the idea is that it would relieve
Yeah.
those symptoms experienced with seasickness.
Does it actually help?
I don't know. I mean, King
Okay.
George VI, his son, would die after a
Right.
lung transplant, and he was a heavy smoker. So I don't think that would have worked for him necessarily, but he did name his race horse a Latin word.
Hypericum?
I don't speak the dead language. And that was after a notable homeopathic medicine for injury to nerves. The Queen
Hmm.
Mother was also very into homeopathic medicine. This is something I've used. She used arnica, and she thinks it's the most marvelous medicine and it should be
Now,
used. And that's
hang
something
on.
Meghan
I was gonna
has
say,
mentioned in her show
and been mocked for, I would also say.
and been mocked for. And actually, the Queen Mother was using arnica because it's known to help with cuts, bruises, any kind of healing like that. And Meghan does mention in the first or second episode, maybe the second, because that was kind of the kid-focused episode with Mindy Kaling, that arnica is regularly used in her household. And been there, done that. Like,
Yeah. Does it work?
It does. I think arnica is great.
What is it, like a little salve you put on?
It's like a little, I think you could put it on topical. I think there's also ways to like, I remember having like arnica pellets I could take or something. Like, I
Consult
have
your
tried
doctor. We are
a
not
lot.
medical
Yeah,
professionals.
please. So apparently she also used it on her dogs whenever they injured themselves. And her daughter, Queen Elizabeth II, followed suit,
Well, look at
treating her
that.
beloved corgis with homeopathy. And so this has run in the family for a very long time. So Charles is certainly not the first to come across and have interest in alternative medicine. What is typically different with Charles, though, is what he does with this information and where he puts his effort.
There was a big question when his cancer diagnosis was announced whether he would go through chemotherapy, because he is such a big proponent of homeopathy. And people ask me still to this day, is it true he's not actually treating it because he's doing
Can I tell you
homeopathic
something?
treatment?
I've looked it up. I've looked everywhere for where it says that King Charles is doing chemo. I am not saying he's not doing chemo.
They never say chemo. They say
never,
treatment.
I will say, Tatler Magazine was the one outlet that I saw a mention of chemotherapy, Tatler Magazine. And it didn't actually quote Buckingham Palace or anyone. And the thing in the Tatler article is that one person Charles met with at a cancer center, said that he had lost his sense of taste from chemo. And reportedly, Charles also expressed that he experienced the same thing, which still isn't enough. So we don't know exactly what Charles is doing, but there was concern when Charles was diagnosed with cancer that he was going to potentially cause some real damage by promoting ways of medicine that haven't been properly
proven in a
vetted.
double-blind study or something.
Yeah, like
that.
Trump, like talking about ivermectin
or bleach.
That kind of stuff, and that it would really do damage on the public. Because I think it was maybe 10, 15 years ago, Charles talked about how cancer patients should be having coffee enemas and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that there aren't alternative forms of medicine to do in tangent with, chemo and other traditional remedies, but people were really concerned about what Charles would do with his power. And I think what's interesting, and we'll go back in a second here, is that really what we've seen from Charles is he's been open about, get testing, get, his prostate surgery that he had. He hasn't said the kind of cancer he's had, but prostate screenings and searches for them in Google went up. He also hasn't telegraphed what exactly he's doing to treat his cancer, which maybe is a lesson learned from the past, perhaps.
Maybe. I mean, we're now in the second year of his cancer treatment too, where people start to ask again, like, how long is this going to take? How long has he been sick? So they are definitely operating under never complain, never explain when it comes to Charles' treatment. Although I would say, I have to believe you're the British monarch. You are getting whatever the best standard of care is. I would have to believe that. And that's
what
why,
I think too. It's one thing when cancer is this hypothetical and you've read research that certain fruit juices help. It's another thing when you actually have it.
And I think this is the case with a lot of wealthy, privileged people who explore alternative healing measures. They preach this stuff until it's present in their own lives. This is what I've just personally witnessed. And then as soon as they have to grapple with it, they just go for whatever is the most
I'm also
you know.
thinking about the barrier to entry because I know as someone who struggled with trying to figure out what was going on with my body and needing like
Mhm.
a whole health doctor. I've also run into nut jobs because of it. That there's definitely value to alternative medicine, but there's also a barrier to entry that
To wade through all the quacks and get to something
and also
real.
just to be able to afford it because usually it's not covered by health
Yeah.
insurance. You can't
It's
see those kind of doctors. And so there is this I don't know. I think there's this privilege to it
mhm.
as well. And I think that's part of why royals are so into it because they are set apart from everyone else. And I do think there's a connection there to being like, no, we need even better medicine. We need to go in a totally different direction.
Right. Kind of like not going through the NHS for your cancer treatment, but going to a private clinic instead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some people have those privileges. So what's interesting is when Queen Elizabeth passed, she was the royal patron of the Faculty of Homeopathy, which King Charles, that's one of the patronages that he kept. One of the last times that we really heard about homeopathy and the king and queen was in November of 2022. Hello Magazine reported that Charles joined his wife at an Indian health and wellness center for his 71st birthday. The retreat sees every guest go through a health evaluations by doctors and in their respective system of medicine. Camilla also goes to these centers as well. She's
I'm
into
picturing the resort in the last season of The White Lotus where they're in Thailand and they get all the health screenings when they arrive.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because she went in October of 2022 for a reportedly eighth visit for a cleanse of mind, body, and spirit following a busy period. And so what's very funny though is this article, and this is why you always got to research a little farther. The article quotes Edzard Ernest, which they write as Edward. I think they probably just
They were like, we're not
autocorrect
doing
it.
that. Yeah.
And this is why it's funny. So they quote his book, Charles, the Alternative Prince, as saying he takes a great interest in alternative medicine, which weird quote to throw in. I
Yeah.
mean, it feels like you have to hit your quota of quotes for like your sixth grade paper and
Mhm.
like two quotes. Here's what's funny about this though. Zard Ernest wrote the Alternative Prince an unauthorized biography. And he talks about the fact that actually Charles's tenacious promotion of unproven, disproven, occasionally harmful alternative therapies, it's not great. And it inspires people to think more critically than King Charles. It's also funny because Ernest has been very forthright. In September of 2022, 2 months before the Hello article, he told the scientists that King Charles takes a great interest in alternative medicine, which is where that quote probably came from Hello Magazine,
Mhm.
which he originally thought was brilliant because such high profile attention could foster support in Ernest's own work, researching which, if any alternative treatments hold scientific merits. But it turns out that the king isn't really interested in research, but wants to use as much as possible alternative medicine in the NHS nationally and in medicine globally. And King Charles, his charity, they tried to get Ernest fired from his professorial position. So it's very funny
No.
that Hello Magazine is quoting this one part of a benign part of the statement to be like, look at all these people that support it. It's like, have you just take a second to Google this man?
Wow.
They are not buddies. He is not Team Charles. So, yikes. And as always with Charles, you can bring most things back to the Black Spider memos, which is one of the only times we have had actual proof of what the monarchy does with government or how they might interfere. So,
Mm.
for anyone that doesn't know, the Black Spider memos were these collections of letters that then Prince Charles had sent to ministers in different UK departments. It took 10 years for The Guardian to get their hands on these through FOIA requests.
Okay.
Someone pointed out that if it was such a nothing burger, why did the government
Fight
pay
to,
something like
yeah.
£500,000 to fight it? You
Right.
know?
Well, because we know that the monarchy and the government are in communication. Like, that's not the issue here. The issue is, if I'm understanding correctly, like what Charles is doing with his connection to government offices, like what he is advocating for or requesting in these memos, which, why are they called the Black Spider memos?
They're called that because Prince Charles's handwriting is very like scrawly and spidery looking.
Black
That's why
Spider.
they
That's
isn't that
funny.
great?
Yeah.
And what's interesting though is so while some people try to write them off as a nothing burger,
Uh-huh.
the Times in 2015, that's the UK paper, reports that the most stunning policy victory achieved by the prince in these letters was the delay by several years of the introduction into Britain of European regulations on complementary medicine designed to protect the sick and vulnerable from dangerous remedies.
So, like herbal remedies, or in the US, we have supplements notably are not approved by the
Yes.
FDA, like that kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah. So as a result, herbal medicine practitioners gained years to, respond to the change, to have things.
Circumvent it.
It's also interesting thinking of EU regulations, right? Because of obviously we know Britain Brexit happens, right? So I find that interesting too. I'm like, I wonder where Charles really falls on the whole Brexit thing. So he did have an impact on the new rules, and he effectively helped to delay them. So the idea that these weren't important at all and that these letters didn't do anything aren't true, and it's really our only insight into what happens between, in this case, the future king and then Prime Minister Tony Blair, who he was writing to in these letters to affect change, to clearly interfere with the government. And if these letters were so insignificant, why did FOIA requests after that year change so that you
Mm,
cannot request access under law for
that's so. It's what.
yeah, so you can no longer under law, under the Freedom of Information Act, you can no longer request letters sent by the next in line, the heir apparent. You can't request access to private letters sent to UK government officials. So, what they learned
Wild.
from this was how to make the laws tougher
Hmm.
so that we couldn't have access to information, which again is just transparency.
Fascinating. And it all stems from homeopathy.
It all does. And this is kind of a common theme we see with Charles, where I think being Prince of Wales for decades and decades and not having a purpose really drives you to maybe do things and get involved in things that you shouldn't because you're trying to find your place. Not that that is
It's
an
not an excuse, but
excuse.
it's an explanation.
And
Yeah, for sure.
here's just one more fun little thing that, of course, Charles
Absolutely.
did.
Of
There's
course.
obviously a charity for this too.
Oh,
Obviously, Charles is going to start a charity. In 1993, King Charles established a charity called the Foundation for Integrated Health.
sounds great.
Well, in 2010, it closed amid allegations of fraud and money laundering. A criminal
No.
investigation ended in the conviction of the foundation's financial director, George Gray, which sounds like George Glass, the fake
Yeah.
boyfriend from the
George
Brady Bunch.
Glass.
The College of Medicine arose from the ashes after. So you see, we're using different language now. It's not
College of
integrated health,
Medicine.
it's not
Yeah.
alternative, it's the College of Medicine.
That's very classical.
And know what's amazing though? The Guardian reports around this time that, oh, don't worry, they were already planning on like closing anyway. They didn't close because of all that money laundering. They just, it's just because like they did all they needed to do. They're like, we've
Huh.
done it. We're fine. We're good. Like nothing to see here.
We accomplished our mission. We did it, folks.
We did. So again, for a while, around the time of Charles's Black Spider memos and everything with homeopathic remedies, a lot of people were questioning if he was suited to be king, if he couldn't seem to respect the division that does exist between the monarchy and the UK government and the role that he's supposed to play in that. Interestingly, one person who was promoted within his royal household was a doctor named Michael Dixon, and he is the head of the Royal Medical Household, and he's also the chair of the College of Medicine, which
Interesting.
promotes complementary medicine, which is a nicer way of saying alternative or
Mhm.
homeopathy. And that's caused some criticism from people who are a little worried about Charles's views on medicine or promoting things that maybe haven't been proven. A spokesperson for Buckingham Palace was like, no, he's just like there.
Huh.
Like he's just like helping.
So his job kind of is to oversee what, like all of the treatment that the royals get? Am I reading that correctly?
What Buckingham Palace told the Telegraph is that he's not the king's physician. And this was back in 2023. What they said is, quote, Dr. Dixon receives an honorarium to cover travel and expenses. This is paid from the king's private income, not from public money. So
Interesting.
they make a big point that like this is not taxpayer funded or anything. He's paying for this out of his own pocket. And the other thing that the spokesperson said for Buckingham Palace was that there is nothing secret about his appointment. It is not necessarily the case that such appointments are announced publicly.
I mean,
I
guess.
guess, but
Yeah.
also you probably won't be announcing this publicly when it's like this kind of controversial head
Yeah.
who also sits on the chair for the College of Medicine, which I believe King Charles is also involved in some way, even though the other charitable foundation closed down.
Google, hello. Oh, there's so many King Charles medical colleges to sift through.
College of
Medicine and integrated health, it now says. Interesting. He made him a commander of the Royal Victorian Order last June,
Well,
so
there you go.
he's continuing to honor Michael Dixon. Fascinating. So it's kind of like a charitable arm of the royal machine, still promoting. The image on the header of this website is some little purple flowers next to some green capsules, and there's like a little thing here called Beyond Pills to click on. Wonder where that'll take me.
What's difficult
Huh.
here is that on the one hand, yes, we have a very big problem. I don't know what it's like in the UK. I know in America of greedy insurance companies, and at least in America, a lack of a public affordable healthcare system, a nationalized healthcare system, and also drug companies pushing really dangerous remedies for, oh, you had your wisdom teeth out. Here's
Yeah,
fentanyl, basically. You
overprescribing.
know what I mean?
That's what this says. The Beyond Pills campaign was established in the wake of the government's National Overprescribing Review, published in September 2021, which found that an estimated 10% of drugs, or 110 million items dispensed in primary care, were inappropriate, unnecessary, and could do harm. Fascinating thing to push back on from this very high level.
The pendulum swing is always what concerns me because what's filled this void of distrust of doctors and rightly insurance companies, rightly drug prescribe or any sort of prescription
For
company
profit.
is that it does make space for a distrust of science and for people to come in and say this works.
It's a slippery slope.
Here's a study that you don't understand because you're not going to understand the methodology, and I'm not going to go into it.
Here's
And
5
also,
testimonials.
and it's so good that they don't want you to know about it. So I question, how do you scale something like this in a responsible way and at a scale that thinks about everyone in the UK? You know what I
Right.
mean? And also, how does this impact the funding and where funding is going for the NHS, which is struggling? So I just wonder how all this works in tandem. But
Yeah.
it feels like another example where King Charles always seems to take the next step further that he's not supposed to take with everything, where the Queen, maybe she shared views on homeopathy and was a patron of one of these places, but she wasn't out there trying to change the healthcare system, or as far as we know, right?
Yeah, Charles really does seem to have this complex where if he thinks something works for him, then he's figured it out. He needs to tell everyone about it. And this goes for, not eating lunch. This goes for like his environmental initiatives, his medical beliefs. Like
All
he
of it.
needs to just learn when to take a back seat. But that's his whole, I think there's a complex there, probably related to waiting for 70 years.
I think there is, and I think it's the continual thorn in his side is
Yes.
how he goes
Like,
about
I've got
and
this
does
figured
this.
out. Now I'm the king. Why can't I set this example for my subjects?
It's all very
Wrapped up.
I'm not surprised that when it comes to Charles, it gets super extreme and maybe crosses the line between what a monarch is supposed to be
Yeah.
doing in the system of government. And it also makes me think about William and where he's at with telegraphing his reign, which right now seems to be more about how he's going to be working and what he's not going to be doing than pushing any, deep-seated beliefs about the environment.
Yeah, I would agree. It's more about, well, he has Earthshot still, which
That's
I think
true.
you have
Yeah.
to, if we're talking about Kate promoting nature as a sanctuary, that's
Sure.
also, I think, a tenet of William's Earthshot, preserving the Earth physically for future generations. It is interesting to see Catherine's platform pivot more to that than the early years, which I thought was her big cause.
I don't get what's going on here. I
Yeah.
don't fully. Here's the thing, and I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to do it. Since the beginning of the year, Meghan has been all up in her garden. She's touching flowers. She's leaning in and smelling them.
She's holding baskets.
It is so, I just, I just can't see a world where they're not like, you know what? Gotta get Kate out next to some purple.
Nature is my thing. Like,
It's
that's what
so
it's giving.
weird to me because it just feels so sudden.
It's
I mean, she did do the
she's
whole,
always been an outdoorsy gal.
yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
But yeah, the platforming of it is new. And you do have to question why. Is it because we have a new lease on life after cancer treatment? Okay. Because that's kind of where they're connecting this back to. Is this a new tenant of her work as Princess of Wales? We haven't really said that out loud. She's also awarding fashion prizes today as we're recording this, kind of delving back into that arena, which again, I think is a very quintessentially Meghan space to be in.
And it's also very interesting considering kind of how they don't want focus on Kate in fashion. I just think there's a way to message everything Kate is doing and rolling out in a way that makes sense.
This doesn't make
And
sense.
honestly, maybe she should have asked Megan's team for some tips
She
because,
herself is getting lost in a lot of these
yeah,
causes now.
that's what it feels like. Like I can't really pull the thread through all the causes that kind of unite everything. Like it just feels like they need to clean up that platform. They need to clean up the
Yeah,
platform and really give a
do a
better,
strategy audit.
right, because it just feels like some of the way it's being reported on, it just feels disjointed.
Yeah, it's kind of, and I feel like that when that happens, you can oftentimes connect it back to like a lack of enthusiasm or a lack of clear direction behind the scenes. I need to know the why when you're a royal embarking on these causes. And I think that helps people connect to them so much more easily. There needs to also be a call to action. It's not just let's love nature. Earlier in the week, there was also a story which is a good example of how this can play out. The Royal Horticultural Society introduced a new rose they had like developed, which is a very old school royal story to hear. Like, oh, they named a rose after the Princess of Wales. They named it the Catherine Rose. And they say, I love the notes that they say it has. It smells of mango and Turkish delight. I'm like, who knows? I don't know what Turkish delight smells like, but okay, right?
Well, okay.
But so they introduced this rose, and if you purchase it, like, to grow in your own garden, the proceeds will go to the Royal Marsden Cancer Center.
That's lovely.
Amazing.
Great through line.
Great execution. Exactly. So that's the level I'm kind of coming at this expecting. Like they nailed it with that. And it was publicized very briefly with one post, and then that was kind of it. But like, I hope this year when the garden shows open up, we get to see her kind of interacting with the Horticultural Society, talking about this
Yep.
project a little bit more
Relating
and
it back to
relating it
nature,
back.
blah, blah, blah.
Pull the threads with us, royal household. That's all we're asking.
Please, dear God. Well, I think that's enough from us. This was a packed episode. We had a lot of things to cover. They just kept coming.
They just never stop, and I love it.
I just did want to remind everyone that we do have a summer mailbag open on our Patreon. It is free for all subscribers of our Patreon to go on and leave a question. And
Look for the picture of Prince William grilling.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's where you drop your questions.
It's hard to miss. That's where you can drop your questions. And we will be recording that in the next couple of weeks. And now, actually, we are going to go record our Patreon episode, which is going to be a review of two very popular movies with a threequel, a trilogy, a third one apparently coming out soon.
Yes, we're very excited.
A different royal.
I'm excited to revisit these movies.
I'm so excited. It's going to be really fun.
Yeah, and hopefully that third one comes so soon because I am ready.
We need it. And as always, we would like to thank our press secretaries for always finding the through line and all that we talk about. You have not created a rose for us yet, but we'll wait. Actually, I think there is a Meredith Rose, so
there probably is.
I mean, come on. How could they not be? Anyway, those press secretaries are Molly White, Nikki, and Lulu. Thank you so much for your support. If you want a shout out, that's at the $25 tier. We also have a tier higher than that where you get the naming rights to Amanda's baby. And if we get one at that level, I will give the next person in line. I didn't tell you this, Amanda. I'll give the next person in line rights to the middle name.
Okay. And I would like to once again state for the record, I am not expecting any fetal collaboration in the near future.
Fetal collaboration?
That's a phrase that was started by a TikToker
that is
named
so
Meg,
funny.
which I love. But it's fake news.
Fake news.
But maybe do sign up for that tier and we'll see what we can do about the naming
Yeah,
rights.
definitely. And then everything else on Patreon, ad-free, early, whatever you want, video, whatever you want. Go over there. Okay?
It's all there
You'll find
waiting
it.
for you.
It's all there waiting for you. So until next time, stay classy. Stay fashionable.
That's not the one.
Don't wear heels if you don't want to wear heels.
Write to the Pope and demand he excommunicate JD Vance.
Okay, bye.